Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for this delay. In any case, it's a pleasure to welcome you to our fourth day of conference and to this APRE dialogue dedicated to the innovation topics. Today I have the chance to have two remarkable high-profile speakers to discuss about why innovation is more critical than ever today and how to prioritize, for instance, in public policies. Innovation in order to unlocking the crisis, in order to build up a post-crisis sustainable ecosystems development and growth. The two speakers are Mr. Jean-David Malo, Director of the EAC, European Innovation Council Task Force at European Commission, DG Research and Innovation. Welcome, Jean-David. Thank you to be here. And Ms. Francesca Bria, President or Chairman at Fondo, Nazionale di Innovazione at Cassa Depositi e Prestiti Venture Capital. Welcome, Ms. Bria, too.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you to be here. Thank you to be here in this busy, hectic period, from time to time, so hard period, but it's important to be here to talk in this dialogue about innovation topics. Needless to say that COVID-19 pandemic has affected our life, both from the personal and professional life. We know innovation do have in common, they solve problems. Problems are in the heart of an innovation. But during the crisis, maybe there are more opportunities for innovators, talents, researchers, startuppers to move and think more freely, to act, to create impactful change. How to generate this change, how to speed up the process of changing, which kind of collaboration between several institutional actors are needed to face this delicate but I would say potentially also promising stage. I will start from the European dimension, Jean-David. We know very well that European Commission put in the past and maybe even more in the future a strong emphasis, effort, resources to push innovation. Through the framework program, for instance, we know that in the next Horizon Europe, the whole third pillar will be aimed to build up an innovative Europe ecosystems. But how to do that? What do you mean for innovation ecosystems? And in short, how the European Commission and the new European Innovation Council can contribute also to recovery from this crisis. Jean-David.
Thanks a lot, Antonio, and good morning to everybody. First of all, happy birthday to APRE for the 30th anniversary, and it's a real pleasure for me to be here with you, especially with Francesca. You said rightly, Antonio, that indeed the support to innovation at EU level is increasing over the year. I mean, you mentioned rightly that it can be illustrated by the share dedicated to the support of innovation among and inside the various framework program over the time. And indeed, it's even more evident in the new proposal for Horizon Europe, where a specific pillar is dedicated to innovation, which does not mean that innovation is not present elsewhere, including in the second pillar, where we will support also research and innovation activities directly via collaborative project, but also in the context of European partnership with key actors from the public and the private domain, in continuation with what we did in the past, but in a more coherent and impactful way, as well as via mission, as you know, which by definition will have a very important innovation dimension. And I don't want to forget neither what can be brought by the first pillar, which is more science-oriented, where you can find the European Research Council, for example, as well as Marie Sklodowska-Curie Fellowship and Research Infrastructure, where you can see that innovation is also emerging. I just want to take, for example, the type of innovative ideas that are emerging from both the European Research Council projects especially the POC project or initiative like Attract that you can find in the cooperation between various research infrastructure. So innovation, in fact, is not only limited to the third pillar in the Future Framework Program, but of course, the third pillar will play a key role, as you said rightly. I'd like to start my intervention regarding also the title of this session, which is fully relevant. You have not really an opposition between disruptive and incremental innovation. And personally, I prefer to talk about game-changing innovation because this is what is at stake in reality. And indeed, in the Future Framework Program, as we are already doing it in a pilot version today, with the EIC, we would like to support different type of innovation, aiming at bringing to market groundbreaking concepts that could shape new markets or disrupt existing one, including social innovation, for example. This is at the heart of what we have in mind. So what do we want to do with the European innovation and why? What we want to do is clearly finance the best and the brightest innovators with the most ambitious ideas in the EU. And when we are talking about a focus on deep tech, it's for a simple reason. In reality, you can see in the last 10 years that it is the area where you have new products that are combining scientific discovery with meaningful engineering innovation that are making a change in reality on the market and that can indeed create more and more potential regarding jobs and growth in Europe. So innovation, therefore, and it's demonstrated by figures, is central to Europe's ability to generate new high-skilled jobs and economic growth in the coming years. And to tackle major challenges that we are facing, and we are typically in a crisis situation with the COVID crisis, which is, of course, a sanitary crisis, but also an economic one and a social one. We have indeed to put all our efforts on any type of innovation. You can see in recent reports that the main source of productivity of growth in advanced economies and in particular in Europe is coming from innovation and is counting from something like 60 to 80% of the total economic growth in Europe in recent years. So the idea of the European Innovation Council started with this idea that we had to do more on innovation because let's be very pragmatic and let's look at the situation in the eyes. We remain in Europe leaders in the capacity to generate knowledge. No doubt about this. I mean, we have certainly among the best universities in the world. We have great researchers. Look at the number of people that are receiving top-level prizes, such as Nobel Prizes. Look at the level of publications that are at top level in the world. I mean, 1/3 of them are coming from Europe. I mean, we remain very good. We are also very good in the capacity to generate startup, for example. I mean, we have created more startup in Europe than in the US in the last 2 years. But let's look at the reality. We have a huge weakness that remains now for several decades, which is our capacity to accompany the growth of entrepreneurs, of enterprise, to support our entrepreneurs that are carrying out innovative ideas. And this is clearly demonstrated in particular in the area of startups. So we lack this type of support, and we are in a certain domain also lagging behind. Let me give you some example. I mean, everybody knows how important, but not everybody is measuring what will be exactly the impact, how important will be artificial intelligence in the coming years. If you look, for example, of the EU ranks among global leaders in artificial intelligence scientific production, the position of Europe, nevertheless, there is degrading. I mean, we were representing 27% of the publication at the beginning of this millennium. We are only representing 22%. And let's be clear, it's not anymore the United States that are leading. It's clearly China which is leading. Second of all, we can see that we have a major financing gap, in particular in the scale-up phase. The EU venture capital market in Europe underperforms compared to the global venture capital market. If you take very simple figures, for example, the volume in capital invested in technology in the US is around 3.5 more the level that you have in Europe, according to Atomico in its last report, the State of European Tech. And if you look another very interesting figure, we have only a few unicorns that are companies that reach a post-money valuation of more than $1 billion US, as you know. We have only a few in Europe. I mean, half of them are in the US today, around a quarter are in China, maximum 7% are in the EU. And when I said 7%, I'm very prudent because in reality, a number of them, as you know, are coming from UK. And in purely intensive R&D unicorns, we are representing only 5%. And the last point that you rightly underline in your presentation, Antonio, which is our last weakness, I mean, if we can try to simplify the picture of the market, is that we remain with an innovation ecosystem which is fragmented in Europe. I mean, we made a lot of improvement regarding the single market in Europe. I mean, it's a reality. I mean, things are improving, but we are not yet a fully integrated market like you have, for example, in the US. And let's just take an example. I mean, it's not true that you have a fully a non-fragmented innovation ecosystem in Europe. In the US, you have a fragmented one, but the various innovation hubs in the US are connected to each other, and it's not really the case in Europe. So here are the challenges, and with the EIC, what we want to do is two things. First, to continue to invest where we are strong, because it would be a bad idea to stop investment where we are strong. And where we are strong is on the support to the emergence of new technology that can make a change in the future, that can lead, in fact, to innovations that can make a change in the market. And this is the purpose of one of the two main legs of the EIC, which is the EIC Pathfinder, building on what we did in the past with the Future Emerging Technology Program, but going beyond the Future Emerging Technology Program by providing support to the consortiums that we are supporting there in order to help them to transfer the knowledge that they are generating in their projects, maybe via the creation of spin-off, spin-out startups or via tech transfer technology. And the purpose here will be in particular tackled with the transition activities that we would like to introduce. And the second leg, which is indeed in order to tackle the main weaknesses that we have, is to provide support to the growth of our promising deep tech startups and SMEs. And this is the purpose of the EIC Accelerator, as you know, where we are introducing and we are currently testing in a pilot phase a very new approach, which is not only, as we did now for several decades, providing grant support to this kind of company, but providing them also with finance, namely to providing them with equity support. Because let's be clear, if you want to help a company to grow up, I mean, you have only two ways. The only two ways are either they are able to generate business activities, which is at the heart of the life of a company, or you are providing them the necessary capital in order to mature their idea and be in a position to attract investors and therefore to be in a position to create the business activities. And for this type of companies that we have in mind, I mean, sometimes you need this patient capital, which they have difficulty to find on the market. And here is the rationale of the intervention of the EIC accelerator, which is currently providing in the pilot blended finance support, so a combination of grants and equity support to this kind of company, with these particularities that we are not looking for return on investment. Of course, if we can have return on investment, it will be even better, because it will benefit also for potentially other companies. But where the idea is really to accompany those companies in the development of their brilliant ideas that may have an impact on the market. So as you see here, we are trying to intervene where, for the time being, the private sector has not the capacity to do it. It's not a question of willingness, because this sector and this segment is by nature really risky. We just want to intervene in order to help the private sector to take more risk. And of course, what we have in mind is that gradually we will go towards co-investment to this kind of company, with the objective for us, except in very rare case, to opt out from the company when the private sector is taking the lead for the growth of the company in terms of capital provision. So this is what we have in mind in a nutshell. And in this context, of course, we would like to do it also with the innovation ecosystems that exist in Europe. I mean, we will not be able to tackle this particular weakness alone, and we absolutely need for this the support of other key actors. So I mentioned, of course, private venture capital, but we have also in mind in our strategy to work closely with promotional institutions, such as the fund that Francesca will talk about, because this is clearly a joint ambition that we have here for all the countries of the Union. Allow me to say maybe a last word before concluding on this point. Of course, money is important, but money is not sufficient. I mean, what is key for an enterprise to flourish is to have an innovation ecosystem friendly environment. And it's very important in this context to continue to support the European innovation ecosystem in order to provide to these companies the best possible support for their growth. It's very important to provide them with other kinds of services, like access to a certain type of knowledge, like access to mentoring, coaching, access to large corporate, because large corporate can play a key role here in the growth of startup and SMEs, access to public and private procurers, because it's evident that innovative procurement can play a key role also for the emergence of a new technology and new products. So all of this is enshrined, in fact, within the EIC, but also within the European Innovation Ecosystem Program. I'm stopping here because I don't want to be too long, but as you can see, the ambition is very high. But in order to be successful, I mean, we will need to work closely with all the actors, like in particular the National Innovation Fund that exists now in Italy.
Thank you so much, David, for this comprehensive first picture. You have already touched upon a number of interesting points. Maybe we should need 3 hours or more discussion to go into details, but we have less time. So I must confess that when a few weeks ago, with my president, my director, we decided to dedicate a session of our conference to the innovation teams, well, we immediately talked to European Commission, EIC, Jean-David in particular, from the European side. And 1 second later, we realized that now in Italy, we have finally an actor that I would say naturally can dialogue with the Commission on these topics. I'm sure that a number of points already mentioned by Jean-David are close to what the Fondo Nazionale di Innovazione already started to do over the last 6-7 months. So I'm delighted to leave the virtual floor to Ms. Francesca Bria, just to start understanding better how we can create this collaboration with the EAC, also in terms of innovation ecosystem construction, and what is the state of play of Fondo Nazionale Innovazione. Thank you to be here.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and thanks very much to APRE for this important dialogue, and thanks to Jean-David for laying out the ambition. Maybe you can mute yourself there from the yes, because otherwise I hear the noise in the background. So thanks, Jean-David, for laying out the ambitious and strategic long-term framework that the Commission is setting out to basically make sure that not only we respond in a very strong and efficient way in this moment of emergency, that, as it was reminded us, it's not only a health crisis, but also a very deep economic crisis and the social crisis. And also we are facing a climate emergency and many other global challenges that we have to be able to face. But at the same time that we are facing this emergency, we also want to lay out the foundation for a renewal of Europe, and which means also looking at the future and looking at, of course, the big challenges of the green transition and the digitalization, a sustainable digitalization that will make Europe able to compete as a global player, also economically, which also means through its technological innovation. And I think this is particularly important, that at the moment we see a synergy from all different institutions at a European level, at a national level, but also at local level, to have this forward-looking perspective on, where we want to go as Europe, but also the partnership, the synergy between the public sector and the private sector that is so important to make this leap and to actually grow in the global value chain of the future. That is where Europe has to compete. And I think, obviously, Jean-David has reminded us about all the challenges that we have, because Europe has, with this ambition, of course, we have some points and some places where we are lagging behind still. We have to reduce the gap with other innovative regions in the world. But I would say also a lot has been done and a lot has been made in the last years, and in fact we are actually multiplying our innovation capacity across regions, reducing this gap, and it can be also measured by the number of startups that are growing in Europe, but also the number of unicorns that, I agree, it's still too low, but still it is increasing, and the number of venture capital backed exits, which is actually increasing if we're looking at the numbers. So we investing in this all life value chain of the innovative SMEs, but also linking to research centers, to our universities, to our corporates, which is absolutely critical. We are going to create a driver for employment growth in Europe, which we also see that now even the startups ecosystem is creating over 2 million jobs around Europe. So it's becoming also an important actor if measures in terms of jobs created, which I think is an important indicator. So let me say that at this stage, also for Italy, it is we have analyzed the need of creating a new ambitious institution, which is the National Innovation Fund, that will enable us to basically start more structural policies in this field and to make venture capital an engine of economic growth in the country, because the availability of venture capital, of course, means that not only we can fund and we can support the brilliant mind or the best ideas, as also Jean-David said it, in strategic sectors, and also enable them to grow and scale, which is what is important to create a more sustainable industrial ecosystem in Italy and in Europe. So the National Innovation Fund also, we have to say that Italy was lagging behind when it comes to venture capital investment. If you look at the European numbers, if we measure last year, we were 10th in Europe for capital invested in VC, but this is going to change very much due to the role of the National Italian Innovation Fund, which has a 1 billion, actually over 1 billion euros to create the condition of a sustainable growth of the venture capital ecosystem in Europe. And we are going to use the fund to invest in a direct way, but also in an indirect way. And we are going to support around the growth and the scale up of around 1,000 new startups, but also accompany the startups in all their life cycles, and so create around 15 to 20 next generation accelerators, business accelerators in a variety of very strategic sectors, from green tech to mobility to agri-tech to aerospace and so on, where basically we are also piloting a new model of collaboration amongst all the stakeholders in the sector, and also amongst Italian accelerators and international accelerators. We're also going to create new poles for technology transfer, integrated hubs and vertical hubs of technology transfer, targeting also our research capacity. As it was said previously, Europe has a very strong research capacity in our universities and research centers, and excellent research center in very specific field, but we struggle to bring our knowledge, our patents, our capabilities into the market and compete and scale it. So the technology centers, the technology hubs, which are going to be integrated, have the objective to really push forward these innovation capabilities from the ground up, and linking also the research centers, the institutions, but also foundations, investors, private investors, and the big companies. Another of our objectives will be to invest in corporate venture capital, and we think this has to be a very strong leverage to allow our ecosystem to grow. I mean, in particular, a strategic interest of Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, of course, is to be able to align the innovation capabilities of the big companies, maybe private or public, and to get them more able to invest and acquire the innovation that come out of our research centers or our startups. And also this is part of the new industrial strategy of Europe. And this is a very important component, because we see that today the exits happen in this way as well. And also you can then integrate the innovation that is coming from the startups really into the capability of the big companies that need to innovate in a new way. And obviously, there is also another objective of the Italian Innovation Fund in general, which is the one to enlarge the private market. And this means that we are, through a fund of funds, we are also attracting new investors. I mean, first of all, strengthening the existing one, which actually, if you look at the data during the crisis, which we were very surprised, because you have to imagine that the Italian Innovation Fund started at the end of January, and we became operational just before the lockdown. And so in a very, very difficult period, just to use a euphemism, but we managed to become operational quite quickly. We have already invested over 140 million euros, and we are benefiting around 240 startups at the moment. We launched 5 funds which are operational and that are acting, and also we were able to put forward some agile schemes during the pandemics to help the startups. I mean, our excellent companies that were so important also during the pandemic to keep us going. You have to recognize that if we look at, for instance, biotech companies that are busy to create a cure for the COVID vaccine, if we look at contact tracing apps, which are now helping our healthcare system to trace the virus and to contain it. If we look at new platforms for food delivery or essential service delivery, behind all this capacity to actually provide, even during the pandemic, essential facilities or services, there are innovative companies and startups which have been able to mobilize their capacity and their energy even in this difficult period. And if you look at investment and the new number of startups which are actually happening during the crisis, you can see that is growing. And that investors are coming together also in partnership, of course, with public and private institutions to make sure that the rounds continue and the funding continue and the ecosystem keep growing, which I think is a very important point. So just to get to what I was saying, we want to expand the market in a way that we can attract also new teams, maybe first-time teams, first-time funds, and we're doing a very good job there. We launched 2 funds also together with the European Investment a fund that they are co-financing, one in biotech and another one in the aerospace, in the space economy, where Italy has really the ambition to drive, and to be very competitive, of course, also together with France and other countries. And at the moment, of course, we look at a variety also of very interesting sectors. As I said before, also the fintech and the digital money system, which is revolutionized, agri-tech, and but also robotic and digital and so on. So let me just also in relation to what Jean-David was saying about Europe acting as a kind of at a European level, integrated and collaborating with a coherent, let's call it, new industrial strategy for the green transition and the digital transition. I think it is very important the role that the European Innovation Council is having, but also the instruments that you're prototyping, like the blend finance instruments and the new accelerators. And of course, from our side, we're going to be more and more aligned and also working together, first of all, to make sure that our startups can use these possibilities and can compete at a European level. And so, more and more Italian startups should know about what the European Commission is doing and should be able to apply to the funding and to the program and be, at the center of this ecosystem. And that's what we are now doing, but also co-investments, which is something very important because, if we collaborate across Europe, then we can boost our financial also capabilities and then be able to support this work further. And in this particular way, and I'm gonna finish here, of course, we have to mention that the Italian National Innovation Fund is collaborating with a lot of ministries. I mean, we have the Economic Development Ministry, which is co-investing with us in a very strategic way. And so we are working really closely together. We are collaborating with the Foreign Ministry when it comes to internationalization and export. We are working with the Ministry of the South because one of the objectives is to reduce inequalities also, create an innovation that reduces inequalities of territorial inequalities, of gender, of course, environmental questions. So we are collaborating, of course, with the European Commission, with the EIC, with the EIF and the European Investment Bank, but also with other national promotion institutions, our counterparts, such as the German KfW, French BPI, or the Spanish Axiom. So this is a very strong ecosystem that we are putting forward. Is a synergetic work. And I think in this moment, let me just end with this consideration. the next generation EU should be about laying out the foundation for the Europe of the future, really for the Europe of the new generation. And this is about sustainability, about green transition, about digital, but also about social cohesion and create a new quality jobs for Europeans. And I think what we are doing here, but also the capacity that we are showing in not only investing, but also operational capacity, so that the investment goes where it has to go and it has an impact that can be measured over time. And really we are setting, I think, a new standard and a new practice, which is very interesting. It will show then how we can effectively invest and then leverage the EU Recovery Fund in the national countries, and do that with an ecosystem of partners that in synergy will help us grow. So I'm pretty positive that what we're doing here will help Europe to set a direction for the future.
Thank you so much. Again, let me stress that if I consider the financial instruments, the initiative, the support services, the acceleration services, consider both from at a national level or at European level, I think there are strong conditions to enhance, let's say, synergies. Jean-David, I know that you have to leave in a few minutes, so I leave the floor to you now. Also I'm sure you want to add something after Ms. Bria's intervention, but let me introduce also another hot topic in this period, which is the technological sovereignty. I mean, across Europe we talk about that. We talk about that in Brussels. We talk about that in the member states. So it's I really want to hear from you what's going on and how we can contribute also to this European technological sovereignty.
Yes, thank you, Antonio. And first of all, allow me to say that I can share each and every word that were said by Francesca on what is at stake here and what is the ambition. And I have no doubt at all that in the coming year we will see clear cooperation, concrete cooperation between what we are building at the EU level, such as the EIC fund that we have established on the 22nd of June, and the innovation fund that you have created in Italy. It's so obvious, and it would be a pity if we are not able to do it, especially because our target group are exactly the same. And we have here clearly to merge our efforts and to do it together. This is why when we have structured the EIC fund, we have structured it in such a way that technically it's a reserved alternative investment fund, which has the purpose, therefore, to have a multi-purpose objective, and where we could have, for example, joint activity in a particular segment, in a particular compartment with a particular other investors, which is one way to do it. Another an easier way to do it, and that can start rather quickly, is indeed in reality to co-invest together within promising startups, and also to identify a number of them already before when they are submitting their proposal, and where a startup coming from Italy has already had a discussion with the innovation fund, and where the innovation fund would be ready to co-invest with the IC fund if the project is finally selected. So I mean, there are numerous possibilities, and what I want to insist on is that we are, and this is what Francesca said, we have a number of tools and bodies that are now existing. So what is now the objective is clearly to ensure that all these tools are working together. And this is certainly one of my first priority in the coming months. You mentioned a very important dimension, Antonio, which is the issue of sovereignty. But allow me to start by saying that the question of tech sovereignty is not only a question of ownership of a particular technology. Beyond this, you have a debate on the model of society that we want. Because in a number of domains, you can see that the technology is driving, in fact, the way we live. So in a number of sectors, and you can see it, for example, on the social media and so on, we are almost absent in Europe. I mean, if you look at the social media, I mean, social media are dominated by the US. So it's a certain way of seeing the society which is at stake. If we have not a certain independence on this, it is the way we see our society, which is a society which is combining, of course, competitiveness, which has the objective to go towards a greener society, a more digital society, but also an inclusive society, and which is building on democratic values, which is at stake. So the question of technology sovereignty is not only a question of who is the owner of or is driving a particular sector or domain, it's clearly a political discussion. I'm starting this because this is what was also at the heart of the State of the Union speech of our President, Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen, a few weeks ago, when she talked about the digital sovereignty. I mean, what has to be understood goes beyond, in fact, only the tech dimension. And in this context, as far as the EIC is concerned, we made clear from the very beginning that, of course, our objective is certainly not to remain within the capital of companies, because our objective is not to have a dilution effect on the ownership of company. But our objective should be also, when you are in front of a technology which could have a key role to play in terms of tech sovereignty or security for Europe, to help the company to remain European. And if there is a need in this context to stay within the capital, we are ready to do it. And this is a message that we are insisting on, and where, of course, we will be only able to do it if we are also supported by other key actors like the new innovation fund in Italy, because we will not be able to do it alone. I mean, we will not have enough means to do it. I mean, let's be clear, in the best case scenario, the budget that will be allocated to the EIC will be around 10 billion euro. We don't know yet exactly how many, but let's say around 10 billion euro, which means that for the EIC fund, you will be around 3 billion euro. It's a lot, but over 7 years, it's not so much. So we will have to build alliance here also with other investors, European investors, public and private one, in order to tackle the needs, including on the technology sovereignty issue.
Thank you, Jean-David. Clear and loud. I mean, I think we welcome this message, this invitation. And Ms. Bria, a few minutes left, so please, if you want to reply, yeah. I think we welcome this invitation by Jean-David. Correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with what Jean-David just said. So I can only stress the points that he made. The first one, of course, that is a matter, when we're talking about technological sovereignty, we're also talking about economic sovereignty, industrial sovereignty in a geopolitical dimension. So this is very clear. And Europe has this big objective, which is the Green Deal, to decarbonize the economy by 2050 now. And even if we want to compete on the value chains of the future, talking about hydrogen, talking about new electric batteries, talking about the equipment, the materials that we need in order to decarbonize our economy, we will need to strengthen our technological sovereignty and innovation capacity. I mean, this is for us a matter of being able then to set the rules, democratic governance rules for the future. And I agree very much that it's not only a question of competitiveness, it is not only a question of sustainable growth in the future and national security, but it is also a question of democracy, of the European model and values that we have to put forward for a sustainable and green digitalization, which is also has to be about full citizens' participation, the protection of fundamental rights of citizens, and also democratic control, for instance, over data, which is very important for Europe because we have a strong juridical framework about data protection and preserving privacy and sovereignty over data of our citizens. In this respect, I think there are initiatives which are pretty important that should be mentioned. For instance, the European Cloud Initiative Gaia X, where France and Germany are collaborating, but where also Italy and Spain are actually part of, with big companies that are joining the effort. And I think it's interesting to see how Europe is going about setting a gold standards for interoperability, a kind of a gold standards for data security, data sovereignty, and interoperability that can be applied to the management of these strategic infrastructures such as cloud computing. I think we also have absolutely clear that we have to invest more when it comes to quantum computing, to artificial intelligence, to 5G, which is a critical infrastructure of the future. I mean, these are the foundation, as also Jean-David said, of the connectivity of the infrastructure on top of which society will run. Education, mobility in our cities, our jobs, our healthcare system. And that's where, you know, Europe has its own model to run society, the European welfare state, the European social economy based on the right on fundamental rights of citizens, on the rule of law, and so on. And that's, I think, where Europe can advance between the Chinese and the US model, its own model for technological sovereignty of the future, which is going to be about a new digital humanism, I believe, that put people at the very center and that, you know, proposes a model that it's not, you know, going back to a kind of Cold War mentality. We see a lot of tension now, but it's really about a digital integrated global society where rules and standards are set in a democratic way. I mean, I think Europe can play a huge role there. So I perfectly align with Jean-David and also what he said about, you know, us coming together to protect when needed our innovation in the future and these companies to stay European. I mean, they have to have the capacity to compete globally, but we also have to be clear that we want innovation that's made in Europe in order to contribute to the future of European society. So I perfectly align there as well.
Perfect. Seems that promising collaboration are coming. Very final and quick bar, Jean-David. Our leitmotiv, our APRE Conference 2020 leitmotiv this year is Nuovo Futuro. More than ever, the R&I communities needs to interact with the rest of the society and the younger generation in first place. In 1 minute, and sorry for this request, what does Next Generation EU mean in the ESC frame and then in the Fondo Nazionale di Innovazione frame?
Very quickly, because as you know, I have to leave.
Yeah,
I mean, Next Generation EU is for me more than a financial support. It's a revolution in the way Europe is going to be built. For the first time ever, I mean, you have something where all the member states decided to do something together for the benefit of all. And some member states in reality will take more efforts on their shoulders for the benefits of others. And it's the first time ever, as you know, that the union will borrow money on the market for the benefit of a number of us. So, and honestly, it's a very important step, which is in the spirit of the construction of the union. Now, as far as research and innovation is concerned, of course, the bulk of the investment will be done by the countries themselves. I mean, in particular in Italy. And there you have indeed a number of activities that could be elaborated, and I have seen some of the first actions that are at stake and that are proposed in Italy that are in reality going towards this direction. At the level of the union, because a part of the budget will be reallocated, as you know, at the level of the union, I think that what has been proposed up to now regarding the support to research and innovation in the context of a top-up for the Horizon Europe budget is going in the right direction, because what is at the heart of the Next Generation EU is to have a quick impact. And a quick impact on the priorities or where we want to land, a quick impact on the green transition, a quick impact on the digital transition, a quick impact, of course, on the health. We are in a crisis which is highlighting the weaknesses that we have in the health sector, and a quick impact on innovation. And it's not a big surprise that the 5 billion euros that are proposed to be allocated to Horizon Europe is equally shared as a proposal for the time being between 3 of the clusters of the Pillar 2 relating to the green transition, the digital and the health, and the EIC. Because, I mean, this is there where you can have a direct impact. And I do believe that we should not miss the target there. I mean, we have a unique opportunity to use this additional budget in order to make a real change. And what we will propose as far as the EIC is concerned, regarding the budget that will be provided, hopefully, to the EIC via the Next Generation EU support, is not to have a bottom-up approach, but a top-down approach by the use of the money. So to use this budget to go quicker towards the green transition, to make more on the Green Deal objective, to go quicker on some of the value chain objectives that have been highlighted by the Commission, in particular under the leadership of Commissioner Breton. So maybe in there also in the green sector. I mean, Francesca was mentioning the hydrogen, but it could be also on other dimension. Could be on health. Could be on but there we should not have. We should not be afraid to say that if we want to have an immediate impact, and this is the spirit of Next Generation EU, we must focus our intervention and not only support any bottom-up innovation. For this, we have the MFF budget. I mean, it's and this is something that should remain. But NGEU is really a temporary support, which must have a clear and evident impact at short term.
Thank you. It means also that we can expect top-down calls in the EIC, Jean-David. Thank you. Ms. Bria, 1 minute also for you.
Yeah, no, I just, I want to maybe highlight one element before closing, maybe a couple of things. Just because we are going to have to be prepared and able to use these resources to have an immediate effect, but also a long-term view of, digitalizing and the green transition, and do that, reducing inequalities. I think there are 2 points for me. We need to invest a lot in human capital, in education, in research and science. I mean, this is absolutely critical at a national level, but also at the EU level. There is no innovation without investment in human capital, without investment in schools and in education. And this, as Italy, we have to do more. And also we have to strengthen, of course, the link between science and business. And that's what we're doing also through the Italian Innovation Fund. But it's particularly important that we make that clear also for the new generation. And another point that I want to stress, of course, in this respect, I have to say we have a gender gap, in particular in technology and innovation, that we absolutely need to reduce. There is less than 30% of women entering STEM and being successful in the STEM careers. from the primary schools to the universities to the industry and so on. And we have differences in salaries, in work opportunities for women, and then, throughout the tech industry. So we have to be very clear to give more power and visibility to women in tech, but not also in tech throughout society. And let me just also add that, and in Italy, this is also important, there cannot be a smart nation without a smart bureaucracy. So we're going to have to do a lot to make the public sector more innovative, to modernize the country, to make it more open, more agile, more capable, not only of, doing the investment process, but bringing back execution and making sure that, the public sector is an engine of innovation, which I think it is. And in this respect, I want to say we have to open it up also to hire young people with new skills, new capacity that can, bring new ideas and new innovation in the public sector. And this is something that also Italy is going to do. Less bureaucracy, but more efficiency, and get the young people inside the public administration to help and innovate. So these are some of the things that I think are the basis for us to be able to then use the EU next generation, as Joan David also is talking about.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, time is really running out now. Thank both the speaker. Thank you, Jean-David. Thank you, Ms. Bria. We already invite you to our first ESE Info Day that we will arrange in the next few months. You cannot miss. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice
Bye-bye,
day.
Jean-David. Bye.
Let me thank also those people connected from home, from office. You were very active on Slido. Let me remind that our conference goes on today and tomorrow. Today is the day of innovation, so you cannot miss our session this afternoon just on the third pillar of Horizon Europe, so the ESC and the innovation ecosystem and our APRE mark. So enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.